this session on the power of voice and how important a voice channel is. So around the room, first and foremost, I'm going to ask for introduction. Steve Morrell, sitting there in freezing UK, founder, CEO of ContactBabel. Steve?
Hi, Rod. Hi, everyone. Yep, Steve Morrell. Been doing this for 25 years. We're contact center and CX industry analysts. And what that means is basically we go and survey hundreds of contact centers and thousands of customers each year and basically figure out where the market's heading and what we can do about it.
Extremely valuable research as well. And Steve, you'll no doubt talk about the South African research project. Down in Cape Town, in the sunny skies and blue skies, no wind today, I hope. Bronwen Brown at
Yeah,
Sigma Connected. Bronwen?
yeah. How's it, guys? Thanks, Rod. Yeah, my name is Bronwen Brown. I basically head up the director for IT operations for Sigma Connected here in SA, overseeing both UK and SA operations. And yeah, excited to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. I think, Ellen, will you jump in from Iris?
Yes, hi. Yes, I'm the head of customer success at Iris. You guys, obviously, some people here have heard of the software before, so going to give a bit of a perspective on our software, which is primarily noise cancellation, background noise removal, and reduction to kind of help the
Right.
industry. Yeah,
Yeah, and I recognize that accent. That's a Kiwi accent, is it right? Am I
it
right?
is. It is. I
There
moved
you
to
go.
London and started working for Iris at the beginning of this year.
Great stuff. And Shalandra from PLP.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shalandra Bunseelall. I've been with the PLP group for the past 25 years. We traditionally specialize in customer programs, HR programs, and play really well in the BPO space. So really excited to be here and looking forward to connecting with you all. So really a pleasure, and thank you for having me as well.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Steve, I'm going to kick off with you, and you have a few slides which I'll bring up and share as we speak. Just if you can confirm you're seeing the slide. There we are. Okay. Steve, I'm going to pass it to you if you wouldn't mind. So a little
Absolutely.
introduction.
Yeah, just got about 10 minutes or so, just dragging out some interesting data focused on the kind of voice channel, because there's a lot of talk about, is voice dead? What's going to be happening in the next few years? Everybody's going to go into digital. Younger customers don't like speaking on the phone, blah, blah, blah. So I thought what we'd do is pull out some data from various studies that we've done. UK, US, and South Africa. South Africa report is released today, and then we'll have a chat through that. So if we can have a look at the next slide, please, Rod.
There we go.
Yeah, so ContactBabel, just to kind of set the scene, been going 25 years. We survey hundreds of contact centers, thousands of customers annually, UK, US, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand. Most of the stuff we publish, pretty much everything, is available free of charge from the website there. And as I said, the first South African report is available now. So let's have a look how South Africa, UK, US compare. This is proportion of inbound interactions by channel. The green stuff here, the dark green is live agent. The lighter green above it is telephony self-service. So you can see there, in all of the markets that we look at, it's around 2/3, maybe a little bit more, creeping towards 70% in UK and US. And we've been tracking UK and US for a long time, and this is really kind of flattened out. Yes, 15 years ago, voice was up at 90%, and then we saw, a significant drop as the digital channels came in, especially email and increasingly now web chat. But really, we've seen a big flattening out in the past 4 or 5 years in the UK, US. It says to me that voice is serving customers in a way that other channels can't at the moment. Now we can obviously discuss whether that's going to change or not, but this is that's very much the case. Yes, digital is important, 25-30%, but voice is still king. Why is this? Well, one of the big drivers is customer preference. So the kind of narrative which I buy into is that simpler, basic interactions tend to go to self-service. That's been the case for a long time, whether that's web or voice self-service. And that leaves the more complicated stuff for agents. We track, this is UK data. It's a very similar pattern in the US, in fact, even more extreme. we look at the three kind of, if you like, edge cases, or the types of things where it's not possibly suitable for self-service. So interactions with high complexity, those with high urgency, and those with high emotion. We give customers a thousand customer panel. We ask them, right, okay, put yourself in this situation. What would be your preference for which channel you'd like to use? And you can see there. So, for example, high urgency used to be, you can't see it there, but it wasn't about voice. It used to be about web self-service. We'll try self-service first. Then in the pandemic, things changed. A lot of things changed in the pandemic, and we thought, okay, well, maybe there's a digital channels aren't being they're not being prioritized anymore. People are learning that. Maybe they're just wanting the kind of reassurance of talking to somebody. Pandemic, crazy times, it'll go back to normal. In fact, it hasn't gone back to normal. The preference, as you can see there, especially for things like high complexity and high urgency, is still very much towards voice. Yeah, they go up, they go down a bit, but that's very much still the trend. It's an interesting thing here, because we compare so many different countries over such a long period of time. We get a chance to look at kind of cultural differences. If we looked at the US chart here, we'd see that the high emotion is far more likely to be voice than in the UK. It's actually a lot about email. I think just it's a case of UK customers maybe being a bit polite. They don't want to ring people up and have a bit of a shout at them. American customers, they're more forthright. They're happier to do that. They will very much want to pick up the phone and discuss their problem in depth with somebody who can help. Whereas send an email, so right, well, that's that done then, and then just go and have a quiet seethe to themselves.
Steve, just pause at this point in time. Bronwen, does this follow your experience in Sigma Connected? Because you've got quite a lot of operations both in the UK and in SA. How do you see this pattern emerging?
Yeah, so I must say it sounds very in line with what we're currently seeing. So there's obviously the AI trends that's kind of like picking up at the moment. So there's a little bit of the voice work that's like kind of like being taken away. So our business is predominantly focused on voice. We've got a lot more voice than we do have any of the other kind of channels and stuff like that. And I think with the AI optimizations that our clients are trying to put in there, it does seem like that 60% is just kind of like where we are seeing it flattening out the same.
Good to hear that. Shalandra, is that similar to what you're seeing in the PLP operation?
Absolutely, Rod. I think if you look at the statement that Steve has put up, that the US customers prefer voice as a channel, we absolutely see and we feel that every single day. One of the clients that we are servicing, it's a very high emotional kind of service that we're doing. And even though there is an opportunity of handling your transaction or your inquiry via a web chat or a web forum, probably 95% are calls. And I think number one, it's high emotional types of calls. It is more complex, but there generally is an interest to talk their query through. So seeing the exact same trend.
Excellent. Steve, back to you.
Okay, let's have a look at the next slide. So that we've looked there at customer preference, and the kind of the vibe you're getting is that maybe voice is going to be more more the channel of choice in the less straightforward cases. I think we can kind of all agree with that. And this is South African data. So what we did is ask the organizations, right, which channel do you think you best would be customers to use in things like for service, for sales, for complaints? You can see that in South Africa, there's very much a kind of feeling that telephony is the right channel for customers to use for things like sales and complaints. Complaints kind of aligns fairly clearly with high emotion stuff. Service less so. There's kind of a lot of interest in web self-service for service stuff, and web chat in particular. And it's interesting because South Africa is far more enthusiastic about that than the UK and US. If we looked at UK, I don't want to put everything on here because it's colourful enough as it is. But there is a very strong feeling in the UK that telephony is king. Very strong for all of those things. So basically, the customers are saying we want to use voice, and in a lot of the territories that we're looking at, the organizations are saying, yeah, to be honest, you're right to do so, which is okay, fine, that's a story, that's a narrative. It's a little bit concerning because when you look at the proportion of CX investments that go into each channel, it's more than twice as much for digital than it is for voice. So voice has got, at least twice as much traffic as digital. Digital's getting twice as much investment. Customers are saying we prefer voice, and business is saying, yeah, you're right to. So, bit awkward.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that we have a focus on voice. If we go back to the IVR era, when it was predicting that we're going to lose all our agents, it was all going to be automated, etc. I mean, that was 30 years ago. Steve, are you seeing an upturn or a slow decline in voice? If you're looking at particularly the UK market, and then is there anything coming out of the recently released South African research?
Yeah, yes, I was seeing a kind of decline in the number of voice calls, but not so much, less of a decline in the number of live agents dealing with voice calls, if that's not a weird way of putting it, because the calls are getting longer. They're getting more complicated. People are trying to do more on them. They're trying to do relationship building on there, as well as, solve issues. If people are calling, they might want more than one issue attended to, otherwise they just go and do it themselves. So the calls are definitely getting longer. So the amount of time you're spending doing voice work isn't getting much shorter, but the number of calls are. It's not drastic, but yeah, you can see a kind of a slow decline. And there's very much the expectation, because we ask, the organizations, what do you think was going to happen next year with these channels? And the live voice, they've been predicting declines for probably 3 or 4 years now. Not a big one, but yeah, that's definitely the heading over there. South Africa is only doing it for 1 year, so we don't have any kind of, past to draw on. There's not a vast difference between South Africa and the more mature markets, the UK, US, about how they think about voice there.
Let's ask our panelists. Bronwen, what's your view of this particular slide? Anything leaping out at you?
No, and I think it goes back to the urgency kind of thing that Steve was referring to, and it seems very aligned. I think on our side of our business, we do a lot of service side business as well as complaints handling and things like that. So a little bit less on the sales side. And I kind of see these kind of align quite nicely to what we're kind of seeing in our operations on a day-to-day basis. And again, I think that when you're looking at what our customers are trying to do to digitize some of the service stuff, and it seems to align quite nicely. It's like the voice is reducing there, but on the complaint side, it's a very complex kind of conversations, and those kind of seem to still remain voice focused, and hopefully for the long run as well.
Actually, I'll throw something else in here, Rod, that I hadn't mentioned, but it's definitely worth considering. In terms of the overall demographic of South Africa versus the UK is a far more, shall we say, mature, aging population than South Africa. So and it is noticeable when we look at channel preference by age groups that, unsurprisingly enough, the younger people are, the more likely they are to choose things like web chat or social media as a preference, whereas older
more
people
digital,
will tend to go for voice.
Shalandra, are you seeing very similar trends in your operations?
We are, Rod. I think going back to what Steve was saying as well, I think there are multiple factors that also impact when you talk about the more mature audience. I mean, some of the research also indicates that if you look at the types of mobiles you use, how big they are, the font size, the screen size, I think a certain type of customer doesn't like to get onto the chat because of the devices we actually use as well. But looking at the actual slide, what we do find is if I look at service in our industry is a little bit complex based on the concierge types of services we deliver and the ability and opportunity to understand what the customer wants. Voice is still probably about 80% of that. We do believe that the digital experience may be a better experience for the customer. But from talking to them, Rod, and trying to understand, and I really wanted to pick up to say, why do you call us? Why do you not use the apps? Why do you not use the chat box? Some of the feedback we've got is some clients still say, I don't have access to emails. I don't like emails. I think that when I call, it's really, really immediate. One of the customers said, I'm really old school typically, and I prefer chatting to people. So I think really, really it's how they want to be serviced. From a sales perspective, we find that probably 95% of the sales that we actually do from an outbound sales perspective is done by voice. I think again on that, it gives us a bit more time to actually explain the product that the customer is buying in detail. Typically, if that's not done, we find there's a higher cancellation rate as well. So very much agree with what you're showing on the slide.
Would you also say
Excellent.
that you can kind of like build trust better, in a voice conversation, rather than having it through a digital kind of channel?
Bronwen, it's been the biggest thing that I think that we love to be, and I like to use the word hyper personalization. I think it's
Mm.
really critical for us to do so. So I think voice gives you that. And when you're doing the outbound sales, I really believe that when you're trying to sell a product features, what we've seen is that customers that have got a voice call followed by someone doing a welcome or onboarding to explain the product you bought, they've got a longer lifespan than a customer who just signed up via digital channel. So definitely agree with that.
Excellent.
Can I just jump
Ellen,
in?
I was
Yeah.
going to ask Ellen to jump in. Please do.
Yeah, well, there's been some kind of metrics thrown around, right? We've talked about average handling time and customer experience and all those kinds of things. And we've definitely noticed, and we kind of have to set the expectation with a lot of our customers that use Clarity around, you might expect that average handling time might increase, which is something that a lot of people want to bring it down, right? It's the idea that we want to make calls shorter so that we can solve an issue quicker. But what we've kind of found is, as you've pointed out, there, Steve, that a lot of the more complex calls and complex inquiries are the things that come through on the phone now. And then when you have bad conversation or poor quality of audio within those calls, that can cause frustration, which is a negative on the customer experience. So by having that kind of making sure that the voice channel is also really clear and really easy to understand and avoid of distraction, it means that yes, sometimes that average handling time can increase slightly, but the customer experience can come down quite a lot, and we've seen that with a lot of our customers, which is cool.
Okie dokes,
Something
that's
I'd
good,
like
good
to
stuff.
jump in here, Rod, and mention
Okay, please,
something.
Steve.
Is I think one of the possibly the key reason that voice is stubbornly higher than I think a lot of people who've invested in digital channels would want it to be, is because it's the channel that gives the best outcome with the least amount of overall customer effort. And what I mean by customer effort is it's not just time, it's also kind of, if you like, cognitive load as well. So sending an email is really easy, really low effort. And then you sent your email and you're sitting there and you think, I should have rung them. When are they going to get back to me? Oh, this is really important. I kind of need this. And stress. So that's effort for the customer. Whereas if you pick up the phone, you know what you're going to get. You're probably going to, probably have to wait for a minute or two, a bit more if you're unlucky, but you will get to speak to somebody who will almost certainly solve your problem or give you a resolution, whether it's a resolution you want or not, but it'll give you a resolution. You're not sitting around there waiting for stuff. You're not thinking, how much longer do I have to click around on this website or anything like that. So it's like overall customer effort aligned with outcomes. Voice is still king.
It's something we'll loop back to, is you mentioned answer times, and I was fascinated to see the preview edition of the South African research that we seem to be right on top of answer times, much faster than US and UK. But let's take a quick look at the next slide. There it is, Steve.
Actually, can we just go back to that one, please, Rod?
Go back to there.
Thank you. Haven't talked through this one yet. Digital channel failure, driving voice traffic. So what we're looking at here is what proportion of callers have tried to answer their own queries online and failed. So these are the proportions of organizations that say, some of it is less than 10%, which is pretty good. Some of them, not many, granted, are saying it's more than 50% of their callers have tried and failed to answer the queries online. So you throw these numbers into a spreadsheet and you give them a bit of a mix, and what you come up with is approximately in South Africa, about a quarter of calls are coming after a failed web self-service session. A bit lower in the UK, a bit lower in the US. Plus, not shown on here, but this is the data. About 22% of web chats then need a call, 21% of emails then need a call, 32% of social media messages then need a call. So people are trying, to use alternative channels. Most of the time they work, but you're looking at those numbers there and you're thinking this is quite a lot of failure demand that's being soaked up by the voice channel. They didn't want to call, they had to call. Thank you. No, you move on to the next slide now.
Yeah,
there we go.
Thanks, Steve. And I think just to add on to that, Rod, and this is more in like a personal capacity and a personal experience, I find it very frustrating sometimes when you do try the digital channels first and never get to the answer because they don't seem to have the complex kind of responses in there. So you end up going through all this effort and trying to get to someone to kind of help you, and you just don't get helped, and you switch back to the voice anyway. So I think it's definitely well aligned with what Steve was saying there.
That's a whole new can of worms, is the whole AI and
Yeah.
bots, etc. Shalandra, any comment quickly before we
Yeah,
move to the slide?
I do, Rod. When you spoke earlier about IVRs as well, I think part of the research in preparation for this, one of the things I did look, I mean, people have multi-layered IVRs that really complicate getting the help that you actually need, number one. Number two, in some cases, if you look at the IVRs and the research shows, I think 5-9 did some research. Typically, the most commonly selected IVR, despite all the self-help tools, is I want to speak to an agent. So I think it still talks about the self-service opportunities, but again, over the last 5 years, it remains the most selected IVR. Please put me through to an agent, or the most commonly used phrase at the same time as well.
Yeah,
Excellent.
100%. Yeah, sorry.
Great.
I think if you're looking for like a balance or something like that, something simple, you can get that on the IVR or through a digital channel. But everybody wants to speak to someone to get that little bit more complicated conversation going. And yeah, so definitely seeing the same.
Wonderful. And Stephen, I think this is getting to the nub of the matter. We're talking about audio and voice quality. So will you pick up on this slide?
Yeah, this is UK data with the similar sort of thing for the US. So this asked 1,000 customers. We gave them various customer issues, and then so how often do you actually experience these issues? So this was like, I can't hear clearly and I have to repeat myself, or they can't hear me clearly. And so it's about kind of repetition within the so it's like, ask people, right, have a think about it. How often does this experience? And there's a few things here to bring out. Number one, the majority of people say it's either very often or fairly often. And I think as customers ourselves, we can say, yeah, I'd say fairly often. That's for me. And when you look at it as well, because I was thinking, well, this is going to be kind of an age-related hearing problem. In fact, it's not. It's an audio issue when you're looking at either end of the phone, poor connections, maybe background noise from in the contact center or in the customer's home or outside, of course, because a lot of mobile telephony. And then when you start looking at this and then we did some digging in, how long does it take for that repetition to it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear, could you repeat it? And you add up that amount of time, and then you put up a factor of how many calls are there where that affects, and how many calls are there overall, and how much does that cost. You throw a load of numbers into a spreadsheet and you come up with like estimated cost of £380 million a year in the UK just by having to repeat yourself. In the US, it's it was close on $2 billion. So it's not exactly insignificant, and it's not a you're not thinking, oh, that can't be a big deal, but because when you look at the huge volumes of calls that contact centers are taking, yes, it is a big deal. Especially in kind of larger contact centers, it really makes a difference.
Ellen, this is right up your street now. Won't you give us your perspectives from Iris on the clarity on the I can't hear you clearly model?
Yeah, so it's definitely something that we hear a lot from potential customers, people that reach out to us that have identified that problem, and that's probably definitely one of the biggest things is repetition or people complaining about background noise within contact centers. Also just agents and their ability to handle like intense calls, and then having to deal with background noise on the customer's end is something that's quite hard for agents sometimes as well, and their kind of ability to do their job. So that is something that's kind of the biggest driver a lot of the time for people that come and contact us looking for the solution that we can provide.
Excellent. Shalandra, I'm going to come to you just now in a few moments with you mentioned to me on the phone earlier about a case study you have. But Steve, any further commentary on this, or we move to the next slide?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what Ellen said there. It's not just, yes, you can have this as a cost factor. but it's also about customer experience, and it's about an agent experience. And the fact is that agents' jobs are getting harder already. They're having to deal with more complex and emotional cases. There's less idle time between calls. So you throw in the fact that they really can't hear properly as well, or make themselves understood and have to repeat. That's giving them an additional kind of burden.
Steve, as part of that research, just a quick question, because anecdotally we've had some stories as well from customers that have talked about the fact that they've had agents after difficult calls that have to go and take 5, 10, 15 minutes away from the headset and go offline for a bit so that they can kind of bring themselves back to being able to handle kind of taking that next call on. Obviously, it's industry dependent and everything else, but kind of have you looked at the costs that entails as well in a business, or was it purely around the kind of the repetitions?
That's purely on the repetitions, this thing. That's a more difficult thing. And to be honest with you, that was something a couple of years ago we weren't even considering, but now we're much more aware of, there's potential for agent burnout, kind of emotion, kind of overloading them. So that is something we're going to be looking at more in the future. But as it stands, we're just looking at a kind of cost perspective from the repetition.
Okay, just before we move into open discussion on this, Steve, why don't you just give us a heads up on the South African guide? And
Absolutely.
I've been passionate supporter of this since the outset, so delighted that we are now able from today to release the research findings.
Absolutely,
Over to you,
yeah.
Steve.
It's there. It's free of charge. It's based on over interviews and surveys with over 100 South African contact centres, but a mixture of captive in-house and BPOs. Looks at all elements of kind of South African industry, so technology investment, CX benchmarking, salaries, attrition, absence, how it compares to mature markets like UK, US. Lots of good stuff in there. And big thanks to everybody who helped and who supported this, including yourself, Rod.
Yeah, great stuff. Looking forward to it. So yes. Okay, that's all the slides now. So, Shalandra, when we spoke last night, you said as an Iris user, you've been using the solution for what, 6 months now, I think, maybe a bit more. What's been your impression?
Rod, if you don't mind, I'd like to share something on screen if that works for you.
Yeah, please do.
Just let me know when you can see my screen, please.
It's coming up now. Yes, we see your screen.
I think to echo very similar to what Steve had said, etc. as well. We've also done a bit of research to talk about what we think are the things that actually impact. I think really from an overall voice perspective, we do believe that human connection, that human emotional need, I think that fulfillment, that smile at the end of the call, I think that really drives the voice channel. I think we spoke earlier about the personalization, the real-time assistance, and the fact that they are complex issues you probably can only solve by detailed voice conversations. We kind of done some work on what are some of the barriers that we believe that sometimes impact digital channels. We spoke about screen size limitations. People don't really want to type on a small little gadget, multi-layered IVRs. And I think Steve alluded to it earlier as well. Lots of challenges around someone doesn't respond to my chat. This mailbox is unmanaged, as an example. And while audiences are tech savvy, there are frustrations that they pick up as part of the journey as well. Again, very anecdotal, like the team was talking about earlier. And this is a case study for a US-based customer. And I think we spoke about age-related challenges at some stage. We've seen the biggest impact using it. So we've had it for 6 months, but the biggest usage we've seen has been over the last 3 months. And even though anecdotal, again, something's transpired overall with the level of escalations we've got. And the escalations have been that when the agents are talking to customers, there's some really key KPIs that we need to adhere to. And that's the accuracy of the data we're actually collecting from customers. So this slide shows the decrease in the escalations of what we had in July from 61 to 16. Yes, it's supported by training, QA, and quality management as well. But the second slide I've got on screen talks about the two key measures, which is date, time. And when you're capturing the client transaction in this case, the accuracy is the most important measure for us. What we've seen is the highest usage of Iris was between September and October. And to correlate with that, the escalations decreased over this particular time frame as well. we've seen a real impact on the AHT. And I think we were talking earlier by saying that the repetition has been reduced completely. It's a better experience for the customer as well. And again, I'll say it's anecdotal, but we have seen that as we started seeing higher usage of Iris, we saw a major decrease in the escalations and a better experience for customers. During my interactions with the agents as well over the last few days, on the telephony platform that we use for the actual customer, they've got a noise cancellation feature as part of it, and they've got access to Iris. And the biggest feedback we got was, while we've got it on the Genesis platform, Iris gives us far better clarity. The customers are able to hear us. We're able to engage and get accurate information because of the functionality of it. So I just wanted to show you how, when we had high usage, that the escalations completely decreased. Again, it's anecdotal, but we do believe it's had a major, major impact in us getting that part right as well.
Oh, that's great news. I'm sure, Ellen, would you like to comment on it? That must be music to your ears.
Yeah, it definitely is. Sorry about my voice as well. I've been a bit sick. Yes, no, absolutely. And I've been personally working quite close with Shalandra and their team in terms of, we helped with that rollout as well. We noticed that, earlier on in that relationship, we had some configuration issues that we hadn't fully ironed out. So I think that's why the data's still just in those last couple of months. But, we worked really hard to be able to address those and make sure everything was up and running and working correctly. And yeah, I think, like you said, being able to reduce those repetitions is really important, and getting that kind of feedback from agents as well. I think that the key here is also being able to utilize it on both sides, right? I think a lot of the time when people are thinking about noise removal or background noise removal or enhancement of voice, they're often just thinking on the contact center side or on the agent side. And I think that the true ability to have that two-way bidirectional improvement, so that it's helping the agent and it's also helping the customer, is what really makes the difference, and is kind of the thing that sets it apart, right, from being able to look at other solutions that exist out there on the market.
Excellent feedback. Bronwen, you're one of the largest users in South Africa of Iris Clarity. Your operational experiences, anything specific that you'd like to bring up?
Yeah, look, I think Shalandra's done a phenomenal job there with his presentation, because I've only got feedback from operations, our clients, etc., and things like customer complaints and all of those types of things have definitely reduced there. I think where we saw a big improvement overnight was that our QBRs and MBRs with our clients, the feedback was significantly better and improved instantly the moment we implemented Iris. So much so that I got flooded by operations to say, "Oh, I want to be next. I want to be next." So the whole business just grabbed onto this, and everybody just wanted Iris because of the reduced background noise and all of those things. So definitely had a phenomenal experience, and it's also driven down to, or given back to our customers and clients, by giving them a good customer experience and outcome, from deploying this, throughout the organization. So yeah, I think, I'll just quickly say, I made some couple of notes also. I mean, I think Shalandra has touched on all of them, as the reduction in client customer complaints, sorry, I can't hear you kind of things in the conversation. So it's obviously improved those conversational aspects. We've got a reduction in IT tickets regarding call quality, headset issues and things like that. It's also given us the ability to go and find a decent quality, a little bit more, I wouldn't want to call it entry level, but a cheaper noise cancelling headset, and added on with the Iris cost. It kind of still worked out in our ROI calculation cheaper than going and buying a high-end noise cancelling headset, with an average of 1.5 to 2 year kind of lifespan on headsets from the contact center. So, overall, it's just been a phenomenal benefit to our business. So, yeah.
I'm thrilled to hear that. The piece I'd like to add to it, and as many of the viewers will know, that I do a lot of work as brand ambassador for Colby Speech Analytics. And one of the things we've seen there, in fact, it was what drew us into the relationship with Iris Clarity, was the quality of voice in the recordings obviously enhances the quality of analytics coming through on the other side. And so we've seen a significant upturn in the quality of analytics coming through from those sites that are using both Iris Clarity and Corby Speech Analytics, the two working closely together. Bronwen, you're using a different analytics platform. Are you finding the same sort of results where
Yeah.
you're getting improved transcription accuracies?
So, and I didn't know, or maybe you didn't know, but we are basically onboarding or doing a POC with Corby at the moment also. So that's kind of like running in the background. Obviously, I think a lot of our systems are driven by our clients. So some of them we don't really have a lot of say or input there, but we're trying some other products. Can I use the name of them? Like Mojo,
Sure.
CX. So we're kind of
Yeah.
like trialing them out at the moment, where it's a agent side little application that also picks up the calls through the local PC and then does transcription on them also. And I must say, like, obviously, we've not measured to say, well, what was the past and what is now, because we've had Iris in before we actually like looked at these kind of products. But I just know it's going to be a lot more clear and a lot better in that sense. I think there's a piece that I wanted to just add on also, and I think the whole world was spoiled when COVID occurred and everybody was working from home. So that also created that silent working environment, so no background noise. And as the world started becoming a little bit more back to normal, and we started off delivering services from South Africa and it's inside buildings again. The feedback we got from our customers was that it used to be very quiet, no background noise, and coming back into buildings here in SA, there was a lot of background noise. So those have also now been gone away after we've implemented Iris. So definitely another plus there.
Pleased to hear that. Steve, you were commissioned a while back, if I remember correctly, to do a particular white paper on audio quality. Can you speak to that document?
Yeah, really, we were just trying to kind of quantify. I alluded to it before, trying to quantify how customers felt about things, and then so that was the customer feeling, and then put a number on how many calls this is going to be affecting, and then multiply up from that how many agents, what cost, and things like that. And I think that was some of the information that you saw before there. And really, it was very interesting to see, because when I started, I'm like, well, it was 15-20 seconds a call. Does that really matter that much? And then, but when you start using kind of the multipliers, because the contact center industries in South Africa, UK, and US are enormous. And when you start looking at these various issues, then you start getting, and that's just the cost thing. You're not even taking into account the impact on the customer and the impact on the agent, which I've said
the
is
CX component.
Yeah, the CX AX component, and then like you've mentioned there, the analytics, and we're using AI because we've hardly mentioned AI, thank goodness for once. But you've got transcription there. A clean, accurate transcription is absolutely necessary for any kind of part of AI. So yes, it's hitting an awful lot of the things that need to be hit.
I'm so glad to hear that. Something else I'd want to add into the mix of things, which is to do with the analytics. One of the things we've managed to pick up using the Corby Speech Analytics is the beast called silent time. In one particular site, over 1,000 agents, something like 12% of total call duration across the entire site was agent abuse silent time. And the minute that was picked up, I mean, the ROI was there within weeks of being able to fix it. So once again, I think using these tools, whether it's the audio quality to reduce handling time, repeat calls or agent repeats, etc., and or using the analytics component of it to pick up those anomalies within the calls. We're going to go around the room quickly because I do like to wrap at about 45 minutes. So, Shalandra, first, anything from your side you'd like to add?
Not too much, Rod. I think that uh, there's always a myth that the voice is dead. I think the research shows us it definitely is not dead. I think personally, as a customer myself, I love speaking to people. I think it actually is what brightens the day. But I also think that from a cost perspective, from an efficiency perspective, there is a target audience that still needs the digital channels, need the AI to streamline and enhance the experience. But I definitely think it genuinely is a myth that voice is dead.
Voice is better. Okay. Bronwen, wrap up.
No, I think I've already said everything I could say at the moment, so I'm all good.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Rod.
Okay. Ellen, from your side,
Yeah,
from Iris.
I mean, yeah, thank you, for everyone being here and for Shalandra and Bronwen, obviously both customers of ours. Obviously me a bit biased living in the customer success space, but my biggest driver is all about that customer experience, right? And I think being able to anything you can do to kind of improve a customer's experience and the agent's experience on both sides of the call is important. So yeah, just continuing to keep that in mind and yeah, make it a better experience for everyone all around. And thanks, Rod,
Excellent.
for us today.
That's great to have you with us. And Steve, from your side, is there anything that maybe triggering some future research that you might want to probe into in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, with an awful lot, but something I would like to mention here is like kind of, I think the data we've shown and the conversations we've had today say that both from the customer and the business's perspective, voice is still the gold standard of service. Now, but when you look at the type of calls that are being handled and will continue to be handled in the future in increasing numbers, they are highly urgent, highly complex, and highly emotional. They are things where it's you need to be concentrating on them, whether you're a customer or whether you're an agent. And if you can make that easier by clearing up, by hearing what's actually being said, and and vice versa, then that's going to obviously improve customer experience, going to improve outcomes. It's going to make those high cognition calls on both sides of it actually easier for people. And to be honest, it is an issue. We've proved that with the data, and we've heard today that there are ways around this to make this work.
Wonderful. Thanks for that. Really wraps it up nicely. So I think from my point of view, from CX Showcase, Bronwen, thank you so much for your inputs. You're really valuable. Shalandra, great. Loved the case study. I think we must pick up on that. Ellen, thanks for making it today. I know you're not feeling well, but highly valued. And Steve, really great to have you on, and also for sharing the data, which I think is vital to any of us in the industry where we're looking ahead and using that information for planning and budgeting going forward. So thank you, everybody. And this will be recorded, and I will make the recording available as well.